Alright, hello everybody. What we're going to do today is take a look at a flying lap of Silverstone and then what I'm doing through each of the corners to possibly get a reasonably quick time. So coming out of Woodcut onto the start-finish straight, making sure that we've got our foot absolutely planted in fourth, and then we're looking for our first braking marker just before the 100 board, down into third, turning into copse, trying to keep it nice and tight on the exit, and getting the power down in as much of a straight line as we absolutely can, all the way over to the right hand side to flick the car through maggots, cutting that little inside as much as we possibly can, and then braking again just before the 100 marker board. Beckett's now again, see, keeping it nice and tight with the wall, and then accelerating out once again, trying to make sure we're accelerating a straight line as much as possible. Chapel absolutely flat through Chapel, although we are obviously having to manage the sliding of the car. Hanger straight all the way down here. We'll brake between these two marker boards. There we go, on the brakes. Down to third. Into Stowe. You can see I get very sideways here. I'm not a fan of Stowe in this car at all. Very off camber. But we kind of manage our way through. And off we go once more, looking for our braking just by that marker board on the left hand side. Into club, keeping the car nice and tight, so you're almost touching the wheel on the inside there against the wall, and accelerating away. You can see we're only using third, fourth and fifth for this track. Into Abbey, clipping that corner just slightly, throws us off a little bit, but off we go again. Fourth gear, we're going to change gears just as we hit 218 k's an hour. Farm straight, braking down to Woodcut into fourth, managing the car through this long section, getting on the power to then power us over the line. Okay, and that was a 145.1. Now I should stress that this is by no means an RSR world record. There's definitely time to be had here, but it's a fairly quick lap, so I thought I'd talk you through some of the points. So let's start that again. Right, so as I say, coming through Woodcut, you want to make sure you get as good a drive or exit drive. You see, managing the car at all times where possible. You want to be accelerating in a straight line. Big surprise, right? That'll give you the most acceleration and the best possible speed down the straights. Now, cops, let's rewind this a little bit actually. So cops, we've come over the start finish line and we want to line ourselves up. So we want to look for our first braking marker, and our first braking marker is just before this board here. So you can see I'm now full on the brakes around about here. So you want to be braking around the, let's call that the 125 mark, and I'm absolutely full on the brakes coming down from just over 200 k's an hour. So slowing down. You can see also I'm not fully on the brakes now because you've got to manage the car, make sure you don't lock up. Okay, I'm also on the left hand side here, looking to try and cut into this wall as much as possible. Gearing down into third gear, that will obviously make the car start to lock up the rear wheels as before, and that'll help us a bit with turn in. Oops, let's go 4 times slow. Okay, so now you can see the car is turning towards the apex, but I've had to wind on a whole bunch of extra lock to get it to do so. Let's have a look at that again. A whole bunch of extra lock, because what'll happen is that when the brakes, when the rear wheels start to lock up, it'll give you extra turn, but then that will eventually stop. You can see as the car is moving here that there's definitely still a lot of understeer, but now I've applied the accelerator, and now the car is starting to transition into oversteer again. So I'm now able to use the accelerator and modulate that to get the turn that I'm looking for. So now the front wheels aren't doing all that much turning. It's mostly the accelerator that's doing the turning. Now, on the exit here, you'll see I straighten the car up as nicely as possible to get myself the best amount of acceleration I possibly can going towards the next corner. So off we go, and here this corner, you can see I'm all the way, I'm pretty much in the grass here, all the way on the right hand side. The next corner, this left-hander, you want to take absolutely flat out, but to do that you need to be able to make sure you can turn the car in and still be on the power. If you're over here on the left-hand side, that's not going to help, right? You're making the corner super narrow. You want to make the corner as wide as possible in order to be able to do this. So you can see I now start turning in, pointing the car. Because we're going so quickly, it will the car will turn nice and easily. And here you want to cut this line as much as possible, but keep 2 wheels on the inside of this white line to make sure you don't get a track cut, right? So this is using all of the track that you possibly can to make sure that you can be flat on the power. Now you see I'm not actually flat on the power, so I'm lying to you. I'm not flat on the power, but I'll tell you why just now. And then off you go all the way through. You've kept the course as narrow as possible, so you've not ended up all the way on the right hand side, having to bring the car all the way to the left and then unsettling it again for the next corner. No, you're already on this side of the track and doing fantastically. So let's rewind this a little bit. I said I was flat on the power, and I lied to you. I'm not flat on the power. The reason I'm not flat on the power is I'm absolutely at the top of the rev range in 4th gear, so I'm having to manage the engine just a little bit so I don't hurt my engine, and it's not actually worth it to go into 5th gear at this stage, because you're just going to have to gear down. So that's why I've stayed in 4th and managed the throttle instead. So braking now for the next corner, you'll see happens just before this. I think it's a 100-meter board or 100-yard board. So here we are. We're now flat on the brakes at about the, let's call that the 150. And we're now once again going to be looking to gear down into 3rd gear and get a good exit. This car is all about the good exit, right? So here we go. Once again, hard on the brakes, still managing the car down to 3rd gear, letting the rear lock up a little bit, and getting that lovely turn in. Now you see what I've done here is I've overcooked it slightly going through Beckett's, and I'm now, okay, so I had to wind on a bunch of opposite lock not to spin the car. So let's have a look at that again. Here we go. Braking hard. Down into 3rd gear. I've gone down into 3rd gear a little bit early, so now the car is way more unsettled than I wanted it to be. A little bit of turn in immediately creates that oversteer, and look at me having to wind on all of this opposite lock, right? So the car is now super sideways through Beckett's, which is fine, except for what's about to happen now. Here's that understeer that I was talking about. Immediately that understeer started to happen, and I've already started to pull away from hitting that apex, and I'm now having to crank on more steering than I had anticipated, and I'm not going to come close to hitting the apex I was trying to. And on the exit, I'm going to be further away from that apex. Look at all this space I have here. So ideally you don't want to make the car that sideways, and now I've transitioned back to oversteer again. This amount of oversteer is kind of what I'm looking for on the exit anyway, because I want to make sure that as the corner straightens out that I'm flat on the power. See how flat I am here? Absolutely flat on the power to maximize my exit. You also, through Beckett's, you don't want to be out here on the left. You want to be as far on the right as you possibly can, as quick as you can, because you're going to have a very quick corner. This left-hander is going to be super fast. So on Beckett's, you don't want to be all the way on the left, because that's going to leave you a lot of work to get all the way over to the right. So I sacrifice a bit through on the exit of this corner to make sure that I'm as far on the right as possible, and that coming up to the next corner I can line myself up nice and all the way on the right hand side here, right? So I've now put myself into 4th gear, geared up, and I'm still basically flat on the accelerator. A little bit of modulation, tiny bit of modulation here through Chapel. Again, the car is oversteering already. That's absolutely fine. Through when you're doing sort of 160 k's an hour, it's fairly easy actually to maintain this. So Chapel, I'm just trying to aim the car to this white line here. Let's get a nice apex going so that I can be flat and widen the corner as much as possible, giving me the best possible exit. Already in 4th gear and absolutely flat, and going to be looking to transition into 5th gear just now. So here we go, all the way down. There we go, about 218. And off we go again, looking for our braking point. Right, so this, as I say, is probably one of my least favorite corners, but down the hanger straight, we're going to be braking. In fact, we're already braking about the 150 before this 100 marker. Hard on the brakes in a nice straight line. Look at this, in a nice straight line. You definitely want to do that. You want the maximum braking power possible. I've started to turn the car in already, but I do kind of make this bit of a mistake, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I've overcooked it. Look at that, overcooked it, and I'm now just drifting through Stowe, which is quite impressive, but is not actually the quickest way of doing it. So let's have a look at that again. So I've overcooked myself into the corner. I'm having to desperately gear down to make sure I don't overshoot the corner, but that then obviously pops the car sideways, and I then have to manage that oversteer. Ideally, you want to be doing what I'm doing, but less than this, not having the car oversteer quite so much on the entrance, because again, you want to be hitting the apex around about here, around this corner there. And then you can power your way out of Stowe. Of course, Stowe on the exit has got a bit of an awful camber. It's off camber, right? So it wants to spit you out on the left-hand side. So this massive amount of oversteer actually is somewhat manageable, because I'm able to gather the car and then power my way out. But it's not the best way. Definitely less oversteer. You do want oversteer, but you don't want this much. So at this point, I actually wanted to be pointed straight and going for it, but I'm still having to manage the car because of how much oversteer I've got into the corner. And that spit me all the way out here. I wanted to be here. I wanted to be further in on the power. There we go. And there you saw I had to manage the car. There. That was not ideal either. That definitely lost me some time. And back, and more management, and there we go, we're on the power properly again. Okay, so definitely a few tenths lost there. But off we go, and now looking for our next braking marker, which is just around this 100 board. You can see me on the brakes, and I'm immediately managing things once again. And we are then going to gear down to 3rd, gain a little bit on the brakes, using the engine braking power as well from gearing down. But once again, this will pop the car a little bit sideways, but I do it much better through club than I did at the previous corner. And we are then going to be trying to keep the car nice and tight. Here we actually get it right. Look how close we get to that barrier. That really was super close. But we then get a lovely exit out of club. The car is still wanting to oversteer, but that's fine. We can let it drift out wide because we've kept it so tight through club corner. We can then power all the way down to another corner where we're going to try and keep the car, make the corner, I should say, all the way on the right hand side, make the corner as wide and as long as possible so we can stay on the power as much as possible. But for Abby, there are a couple of things here. Number one, you can't take it flat, so you've got to transition the weight of the car to give you as much turn in as possible. So you'll watch that I don't brake all that much. So I'm all the way on the right hand side. Let's have a look at my pedals. Coming off the throttle, off the throttle, off the throttle. So I'm not even braking. I'm just coming off the throttle to get the transition, turning in heavily. Look how much steering angle I have. But I'm not turning that much. But with this car, with all the understeer, look how much steering angle I'm having to use. The one part with Abby that I'm not doing, as you saw with one of the first corners on this track, was cutting it. So I'm not cutting this corner. The reason I'm not doing that is there's a sneaky little bump here, which you see I do hit. And what that actually does is throw you off onto the exit. The more you hit it, the more it throws you off. So actually, I didn't want to clip it like I did here. But it was luckily manageable. So here you can see, boom, there's the bump. Back on and on again. and off we go. It throws us all the way out here, and I now have to manage the car because of that bump. So ideally you don't want to hit that, and I'm really far on this exit, and you will always be really far on this exit. It's very easy to go off and into the weeds here. So let's have a look at that again. Oops, where is it? There we go. Okay, so let's speed this up a little bit. Okay, so off the power. Weight transition has allowed me to turn in lots of lock. Bump and bump again has thrown me out a bit. Ideally you don't want to clip that. Meant I had to manage it on the exit. But here we go, and you're still flat on the power on the exit, giving you the best possible run down the straight, and giving you the most top speed possible down the farm straight. Last corner, here we go. Let's have a look what we're doing here. So through Woodcut, this corner you've really got to manage the car through. There's going to be a lot of understeer, but the idea is to try and carry as much speed as you possibly can through Woodcut, and let the car scrub off a bit of speed and then get back on the power, and let the rear wheel drive nature push the car around, and now you can manage the car through Woodcut on the oversteer, which is a much better way of doing it than managing the understeer the whole way around. And the start finish line I think is here, and off we cross the line we go at a 1:45.114. So let's just have a look at that again. So down from straight, all the way on the left hand side, braking quite early, so braking just before this section here, turning the car in, going into fourth, just letting the car slide. Just letting the car slide through here, being patient, being very patient, letting the understeer take us, and then eventually getting back on the power when we feel like we have enough runoff. There's the oversteer that we're looking for on the exit, and powering across the line. And that's it. I hope this was useful, and I hope you learnt a little bit. I certainly learnt a little bit from analyzing my own lap, and yeah, we'll see you next time.